Up before the rooster crows, I'm bringing you the latest Monster Monday, the best way to start your week. But speaking of punchy and punctual poultry, I'm proud to present our latest beastie, the spicy chicken wyvern, the Quematrice. We're dipping our toes back into Monster Hunter Wilds with the only creature that I've been able to hunt besides the Chotacabra. Sharing some naming conventions with the cockatrice, this scaly scavenger is a brute wyvern that is the first elemental monster properly faced and fought in the wilds. As the second true monster of the game, it's a little nastier than the Chotacabra, which we demonstrate by having it weigh in at level 5. However, that element it has doesn't tie deeply enough into the monster for me to include it as a trait, and I'm also reticent to recognize it as a dragon, no matter how many wyvern labels they slap on it. Instead, like the dinosaurs and chickens it's descended from, the Quematrice is a mere animal, which is to not besmirch its design or capabilities. To kick off the construction of this charboiled chicken, it's a bit more force and finesse, which leads to the use of a high strength. The Quematrice here is a bit of a brute. It isn't pulling off too many tricks outside of striking prey, which we'll need this strength for. This is followed up with a moderate constitution, and then sticking with its physicality, a dexterity in between moderate and low, which helps it move about the battlefield. It finishes out its positive ability scores with a low wisdom, with its intelligence and charisma being based on its animalistic nature and not really featuring in its kit. Since the Quematrice is a scavenger, I settled on a low perception for it, though it does have the scent sense to help it sniff out rotting prey before others can pick it clean. When it comes to skills, the Quematrice features a low acrobatics, which is just sort of standard, a moderate athletics as it's something that it could make a bit of use out of, and then actually a high intimidation. This is based on the lore of the Quematrice often trying to scare away other scavengers from its potential prey, attempting to chase them off before an actual conflict can break out. But occasionally push does come to shove, and that's where we have to start talking about defenses. While the Quematrice's dexterity isn't quite low, it is getting there, and between that and its size, I felt inclined to assign it a moderate armor class. It balances this out with a high pool of hit points, playing into a bit of that brute design, and it also features a between high and extreme AC for its components, of which it only has 2. It's still a fairly simple creature. Furthermore, the Quematrice comes with immunity to fire damage, but no weaknesses. I did look at giving it one, but its only weakness is to water, and that's only on certain parts of its body and kind of minor, so I ended up just skipping that aspect of it. Rounding out its defenses, its saving throws are very basic, and, like with the Chotacabra, follow its ability scores. That is to say that it has a high fortitude, a moderate reflex save, and then a low will save. They're more physical powerhouses than any sort of mental giants, and these saving throws are intended to further demonstrate that. That brings us to the Quematrice's offensive capabilities, of which it has 2 strikes. The first of these is its beak, which uses a high attack bonus and is most notably armed with the forceful trait, awarding it with extra damage on successive strikes, which that higher accuracy is meant to help with. Based on that potential damage buff, the beak only deals moderate damage as a baseline, though breaking the Quematrice's head component removes that forceful trait and ends up reducing the Quematrice's intimidation bonus. Meanwhile, its tail only has a moderate attack bonus, but can get some potential accuracy increase through the sweep trait that it possesses, as well as its longer reach. The high base damage helps to further balance this in comparison to its beak, making this the heavier hitting of the Quematrice's 2 strikes. The central aspect of the Quematrice is its ability to spread oil across the ground and then ignite it in a brilliant blaze. In an effort to do something other than the tired and true area of effect ability, I've divided that concept into 2 parts. First of these is spread oil, a single action to create an area of its flammable substance, the one that goes inert if left alone for too long. I deliberately designed this so that the Quematrice could create a few different area effects that have the basic aspect of grease. The save against this effect is made at a moderate DC, and is admittedly outside the realm of what it does in Monster Hunter. It's more me extrapolating from how this stuff functions, and honestly having fun with the idea. So if this inclusion takes you out of it, feel free to take this aspect out of it instead. Because unlike grease, this explicitly spells out that it catches a flame after taking fire damage, setting the ground ablaze as hazardous terrain. This is actually based on something that I noticed during my single hunt of the Quematrice. When it spreads its fire around, flames would remain flickering on the ground, and my character would flinch when walking over them. Now, 4 fire damage for stepping or starting in the fire might seem like a good bit more than a flinch, and maybe even a bit much for a level 5 creature, but any of the areas that the Quematrice could potentially create can be escaped from with a single step. After that, it mainly becomes an instance of battlefield control that, the rest of the map notwithstanding, shouldn't be too difficult to avoid for the 3 measly rounds that it spends burning. But how do you get it burning, you may ask? An excellent question, and one that I'm fully prepared to answer. If you can't lure your players into accidentally lighting the blaze themselves, or don't have your Quematrice teamed up with some sort of mad bomber, it can light its own flame with the ignite action. This super simple ability is one of those aforementioned area effects that deals unlimited use area damage in a mere 15-foot cone at a high DC. It does have some persistent fire damage on a critical failure based on the effects of Fire Blight from Monster Hunter, which has the potential to get nasty if you're both on fire and stuck standing in the hazardous terrain. Nevertheless, my test subjects and I felt that this ability was fine, given its meager range and damage despite its action compression and spammability. However, perhaps being overly cautious, I did add the Flourish trait to prevent its abuse. The main intent of this ability is to use it alongside the Quematrice's Spread Oil, effectively creating a 2-action area effect that has been split in half and can be used to pull off a few tricks. Though, the Quematrice does have to be wary. If players wise up and break its tail component, it loses access to this ability. And for those times when it does, or when it can't bring these 2 halves together, the Quematrice does still have a few tricks up its scaly sleeves. Our rampaging rotisserie rooster wastes no time in establishing a pecking order, dishing out a quick series of beak strikes that really bringing its forceful trait to the forefront. Though, even with a high attack bonus, you're going to need to get real lucky on that last strike. This has a bit more focus on action efficiency over accuracy. However, its remaining ability does help a bit on that end. Sweeping Tail is a single rolled strike against 2 targets for as many actions. It is designed after the Barbarian and Fight-or-Fight Swipe, but given the size and reach of the Quematrice, the testers and I thought it was fair to extend the distance between 2 targets up to 10 feet apart, rather than requiring them to be adjacent to each other, which can honestly be quite hard to get. Aside from reducing the number of rolls afflicted by the multiple attack penalty, the Quematrice gets to apply its sweep trait to this single strike, enhancing its accuracy if only marginally. I couldn't really settle on an item for the Quematrice, so that is going to bring us to the end of this video. Roasting roustabouts in a raucous rage, this rampaging rooster routinely wrecks roving rapscallions in its rapacious ruination. The Quematrice can serve as a solitary threat, perhaps one that is preying on a corpse that the players have been sent to retrieve, or as a mere random encounter. Alternatively, you could run the Quematrice with another fire-spewing companion, or, perhaps as I mentioned earlier, with an alchemist that takes advantage of its fire immunity and has maybe even made specialized bombs using the flammable substance that it spreads. Either way, let me know what you think of this monster and what other creatures you'd like to see in a comment. If you like what you see here on the channel and want more, check out the Monster Monday blog, which is linked below along with a Twitter and Discord. Thanks for watching and have a monstrous Monday.